All right. Good evening and welcome to the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Fagala. And tonight we have a very big show, I think, and it is on the topic of aligners or clear aligners or aligner therapy or whatever you want to say. We're going to look at the pros and cons of 3 different aligner systems. We're going to provide you with the info that you need to decide what is best for your practice and for your patients. We're going to try and keep it objective. Unfortunately, we couldn't include every possible aligner system that's out there, but I tried to focus on what I think are perhaps the 3 biggest ones right now. And so I'm going to be joined tonight by orthodontists who use 3M Clarity aligners. It's going to be doctors Vanessa Peterson and Jeremiah Sturgill. I'll also be joined by Eric Wu, who's going to be on behalf of uLab. And then from Invisalign, you may know them, Doctors Nicozisis and Maz Moshiri, who have done a lot to further and advance aligner therapy in general. But first, I do want to plug something that's coming up that I really do want you to be a part of. Of course, I do these podcasts. They're free. They've always been. But I have a meeting that I really want you to consider showing up for because it's going to be amazing. It's going to be April 8th and 9th, and this is the Live Meeting 2021. The difference with this is it's going to be more speakers that actually come to Memphis to my house, and it's going to be over a day and a half, and it's going to include CE credits. You can register now on tdolive.com, and you'll save 50% with the promo code EARLYBIRD. So that's just $50 for doctors, $25 for staff. It's actually cheaper than last year. Prices have not gone up. We've actually tried to make them more reasonable. 3M is going to be sponsoring this. It's going to be awesome. And so we've got the following doctors coming. We have Dr. Stu Frost, Cole Johnson, Nicole Wax, Anil Adikula, David Sarver, Courtney Berry, Shane Langley, Lisa Alvitro, Candace Coleman, and my good friend Chris Feldman. And then also it's going to be co-hosted by my co-partner at Neon Canvas, Alex Rasmussen. One thing that's going to be cool about it is we're going to be focusing on things that are applicable to doctors, but also team. And we're going to be looking at this idea of how to be the best at every individual spot in your practice. So admin, clinical, financial, and then for the orthodontist, how to be the best leader, orthodontist, and even person. It's going to be great. So another thing you can do is if you sign up now, you'll get a special workflow on how I handle leads in our orthodontic practice at Saddle Creek Orthodontics. And so it's going to be everything from digital marketing strategies to how we answer phones to what we do inside the exam room. And it includes a 36-minute video that goes into greater detail. This is all free if you sign up. So go sign up, tdolive.com. And don't forget to register with EARLYBIRD, the promo code that makes it really, really reasonable. Okay, so I know you're here for aligners, so let's get into just that. And so we're going to get started with doctors Vanessa Peterson and Jeremiah Sturgill. These are 2 doctors who use 3M Clarity aligners. And just like clockwork, they logged in. It was almost like we had practiced that. Guys, how are you doing? Jeremiah, how are you, buddy?
Hey, man, doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so you're in, it looks like a hotel room. Where are you coming to us from?
Yeah, I just didn't want you to see exactly where I live, Kyle, in case you decide to show up one day. Yeah, I'm in Atlanta. We're just down here shopping for stuff for our house, but still wanted to tune in for this.
Yeah, for sure. Shopping for your house. That's amazing. Yeah, man. When did you get a new house? I just got one recently. That sounds like such a first world conversation, but
Right.
when did you get a new house?
Well, we're actually building one. So what I'm realizing is all the things you can actually shop for and how expensive it can all be. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a whole new learning curve.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I get that. We're in the same spot. So it's a good problem to have.
For
Vanessa,
sure.
I love your wallpaper. This is amazing. Is this your house or your office?
This is our office. Yeah, new practice.
Wow.
Opened in July. So
Okay.
yeah.
Opened in July. How many square feet do you have?
It's about 2,000 square feet.
2,000 square feet. Okay. I am the king of the 2,000 square foot practice. I've had 2. So I feel you. You can do a lot in 2,000 square feet. Let me read bios because I want everyone to know who we're talking with here. Probably a lot of you already know that, but you also have super impressive bios. So we're going to read them real quick. So Dr. Vanessa Peterson, she's the owner of Synergy Orthodontic Specialist. It's a startup private practice in her hometown of Rancho Cucamonga, which is the best city name in America. I know it from Workaholics, but anyway, California. And she's been practicing orthodontics for 7 years, just like me. She's married with 3 wonderful and wild kiddos aged 4, 3, and 4 months. Oh my. And around 50% of her patients are in aligners. We also have Dr. Jeremiah Sturgill, who earned dual degrees in biology and business administration from King University. Does anyone know where King University is? Anyone? Jeremiah does. It's in Bristol, Tennessee. And he went to Arizona for dental and ortho, spent some time as faculty at VCU while his wife finished endo. And then he bought a practice on the border of East Tennessee and Virginia, doubling its size in less than 5 years. It's a very impressive practice. If you know anything about Jeremiah, he's amazing. So, Vanessa and Jeremiah, welcome to the show. Thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle, for having us.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we got a lot to get through tonight. And so, what we're going to do, just for everyone out there watching, I want to objectively get through 3 different aligner systems and try and touch on sort of the highs and lows and give everyone out there an idea of sort of what's in it for them if they were to consider these systems. Okay. Now, obviously, Jeremiah and Vanessa don't work for for 3M or whatever, but they're orthodontists just like me, and they've chosen to use these systems for different reasons. And we hope to get at some of that tonight. Okay. And we're not trying to beat up on systems or whatever. We got a lot to get through. So let's jump in. So I guess to both of you, and Vanessa, we'll start with you. What's your history with aligners? How long have you been using them? How many cases per year, if you want to talk about that? What systems have you used? All that sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So for the first 6 years, 5-6 years of my practice experience, I was using Invisalign and a local lab, doing some mild cases. And I think most of us were trained on Invisalign. When I went through residency, I only did 4 cases and I finished one of them. So I had very little experience coming out of residency in aligners, which I feel like for the time I graduated is pretty common. I spent quite a few years believing that aligners were the next best thing. And so I tried to take every course I could. As we know, the cost of aligners has gone up and there's been some, Align has made some pretty big changes in the field. And I knew that I was interested in trying other companies. And so when I sold my practice in Oregon to move back home, I decided to take a risk and try another company. And I decided to try 3M for multiple reasons. They're a material science company and, they're always pushing the limit. They've got good brand recognition and I've been really happy with them. I do about 100 to 150 cases a year. So it's been about 2 years of using 3M. So.
Okay, cool. You did 4 cases in residency. That sounds like my residence experience. And I think we learned together with a doctor how to do aligner cases. God bless him. And at least I took away from it kind of a concept or construct on how to do it. Did anyone, I wonder if there's anyone out there, and you can chat in, people, the chat box is open. If you'll chat in, did anyone do more than like 4 or 5 cases? Of course, I'm guessing Jonathan Maz did 0 cases back when they were in residency, and now they're like teaching about it. But I don't know if there's anyone out there. Maybe some of the newer grads have done more than that. I would still be surprised if, most residencies are doing more than 10% of their cases with aligners. We do 30-ish at VCU. That's where Jeremiah taught. That must be why.
Yeah. No, not necessarily. But Kyle, I was curious if the 4 that you did, were those the only 4 non-extraction cases you had?
Oh, that's such a terrible stereotype of Tennessee orthodontics. That was a good joke though. And you went, where did you go? I got to look where you went. Arizona. I don't even know that. I don't know.
We probably did like 10 or 12.
Really?
So,
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's better than me. No. Well, tell me, let me ask you the same question. What's your history with the aligners? How long have you been using them? How many cases, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah. Similar to Vanessa, did probably, 10 to a dozen cases in residency. And then when I came out of residency, I joined a practice that was in Richmond, and we did a ton of Invisalign, probably 200, 250 cases a year of Invisalign. So I became really familiar with it. And then when I bought a practice a few years later, we were doing Invisalign just like everyone else is. And we're doing about 100, 150 cases a year. And during that time, started looking at other products as other products were coming to the market, and considered 3M, but I wasn't as quick as Vanessa to jump on. I didn't do that till really about last year, because I was waiting on, everyone else to try out the product and see how it worked before I really jumped on. But since then, this past year, we did about 150 cases with 3M as well. So I've been really happy with it.
Yeah, very cool. I asked a question in the digital ortho group a couple days ago about like what system you use. And it's sort of obvious, but most people still use Invisalign. I mean, that's what I use. It's just that was really the only option we had until about like 3 years ago. I mean, like mainstream kind of option. There's been other stuff that you could use. And I've had friends that have used Orchestrate for 10 years or something. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that that's changing, which is part of why we're doing this. So I guess for both of you, and we'll jump in. We'll start with Jeremiah on this one. But what are maybe 2 or 3 reasons that you like 3M Clarity aligners? Each system's going to have its own sort of unique thing, and some of the ones we're not talking about tonight, like Spark from Ormco, and I think Henry Schein's got a system, and then there's there's like 2 or 3 other ones that people are using. Archform's got some software. What's the Elemetrics? What is it? What is that now? I think they
The
like
Sure
sold to
Smile
the,
one.
yeah, they like own Byte now. So I don't know about that one, but anyway, there's different options,
Yeah.
right? But what are the 2 or 3 things that you like about 3M Clarity?
So one of the first things I liked about it was their, interface for the doctor when you're doing, what we would still probably call a clin check, is it was web based, and it was all browser based with 3D controls. And of course now Align has that, but 3M had it earlier. And even still, I feel like the, controls are a little bit more user friendly and load a little bit quicker. Because right now, of course, I have all those Invisalign cases that I'm doing refinements on, and at the same time submitting 3M cases. So I'll routinely have both, browsers up at the same time and be looking at those at, one right after the other. And so I still find that, and I'm curious of Vanessa's experience, I find that the 3M website is a little bit easier still to use and a little bit user friendlier. And then the other one is the stiffness of the aligner. So I, at first, was really hesitant because the aligner is stiffer, but I have grown to really like it because I feel like I can get more transverse control, and also the torque is a little bit easier to control in the posterior segments and also kind of in the anterior as well. I feel like the torque I see in the clin check is actually expressed clinically a little bit more so with the rigidity of the aligner. And then probably the third factor truly is just, I feel as though 3M is a company that has been more supportive of, orthodontists as a whole. And as, my practice grows and as that part of the practice grows, I don't feel like I'm using a product that I'm also kind of competing with as well. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's great. I think we'll see tonight. uLab's also sort of orthodontist specific. I don't know what'll happen in the future. Of course, when Invisalign launched, it was orthodontist specific, and so I think that the way of business is sometimes it ends up going that direction. But at least for the time being, Clarity Aligners is orthodontist specific. uLab is orthodontist specific or exclusive or whatever you want to say. So
right.
Yeah, good points. Rigidity of the aligner. I want to ask about that. Is that ever an issue?
So I would say, for patients who have like a significant amount of crown and bridge work or a lot of implants, and, I really feel like the rigidity of the liner is going to get into those undercuts, I'll still go back to Invisalign. Or even some of those, I don't know if you had this experience with an elderly patient who has arthritis, and, they have trouble physically getting the trays in and out. And so for those patients, I'll go with, Invisalign still. But those are the only cases just where I feel as though there's a lot of crown and bridge or somewhere where there's a significant amount of undercuts. Then Otherwise, the rigidity has really been a benefit. I do feel like it's less forgiving though of patient compliance. So with Invisalign, if they're not compliant, you give some chewies and kind of coach that aligner into place. And I feel as though with Clarity, if the patient gets off track, you usually head them more towards a refinement because you can't really get that tray to fully seat once it's off.
Got it. Well, there's a time where Align, this is like actually before my time, I'm aging myself, but where they had a more rigid plastic, and
right.
I've heard doctors talk about how they miss that now as compared to the more flexible plastic. So
yeah.
Anyway, we will stop talking about plastic rigidity. So Vanessa, 2 or 3 things that you like about 3M Clarity aligners. What do you like?
Sure. Yeah. So I would echo a lot of the things that Jeremiah said, but to throw out some other things, just flat out, the price is great compared to Invisalign. I cut my overhead down by about 50%. And one of the things I looked at when moving to another aligner, one of my concerns was brand recognition. Everyone knows Invisalign. That's the term they come in looking for. And one of the things I really like is 3M is a company that people still know what 3M is. So I felt like that was a great thing that they had. I also feel like I kind of grew up with the aligners with 3M. So when I decided to start using the Clarity aligners, you had to be invited. Like they kind of had to, you had to go through a training, make sure they were really slow to roll it out, make sure that it was successful. And so they've been really great with my feedback as far as like, hey, it would be great if we could do this. And a lot of those things they've built in. And so, yeah, the oral care portal is super easy to use. I actually had looked at 3M and SureSmile Orometrics at the same time, and the interface of the other one was more complex. And so the oral care portal I really loved. So, and I agree, the stiffness, I feel like, especially, Jeremiah said transverse, but vertical movements, open bites and deep bites seem pretty, straightforward with clarity. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense, so I think there's advantages to more flexibility. There's advantages to more rigidity, sort of like a Goldilocks kind of thing. And, what would be really cool is if you had different stiffness of plastic for different types of movements or different stages of treatment. Start off with a more flexible aligner and then shift on into a more rigid aligner. I'm sure I'm the first person who's ever thought about that. So, maybe someday we'll have some of those sorts of things. I mean, it's kind of like wire science, how it's evolved, and you don't start with a stainless steel wire unless you go to Tennessee. That was your joke, Jeremiah. We didn't always do that. Okay. It was a braided wire. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
UT is an amazing school, and I reject your jokes. All right. So let's jump into this. Vanessa, you talked about how you love treating teenagers with aligners. That's not exactly the experience of most orthodontists. I'll be honest, like, I don't hate treating teenagers in aligners. I actually think probably they do a little bit better than adults on average. And I don't know, like, where you start pushing for it. I don't ever try to push for any system, but I try to avoid it with 13, 14, 15-year-olds. But you say you actually love treating aligners with aligners, with aligners, teenagers with aligners. So why is that the case? What do you like about that?
I feel like teenagers are the best patients. They really do have good compliance for the most part. You got to pick them out, but some of the things
Vanessa,
that
you must have the best patients ever.
Maybe I'm just lucky.
Yeah.
But some of the things that I find are really helpful, when I'm going into the consult and the parent is, nervous that their kid's going to lose the aligners, they're not going to wear them, so in my practice, I've got a couple guarantees. I tell the parent, hey, we don't charge for replacement aligners up to 5. After 5, we charge a fee. And I've never, ever gotten to 5. A lot of the times if they lose the aligner, you can go to the next tray or, order a new one. It's no big deal. So that's one of the things I use to ease the parents of, like, yeah, if they're going to lose an aligner, it's no big deal. We'll just get another one. And then the second thing is I give them a 3-month guarantee where if they switch to braces in the first 3 months, there's no fee. And I've only had a couple people take me up on that, but those 2 things tend to ease the parents, and they're like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. And, for the, teenagers that want it, I feel like, they seriously have the best results.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I always ask the parent, of aligners, like, do you think you'll be able to keep up with them? The parents that have kids that are responsible, they immediately answer yes. It's almost like without any hesitation. Oh yeah, he'll do great with that, or she'll do great with that. It's when the parents are like, I don't know. And I just immediately say, I don't think it's a good fit. Like, we need to do braces. Like, I don't want to mess around with that. If you're like having to think about it, like, I don't know if I'll keep up with it, you're not going to. That's true of adults too. I do the same thing with them. So, like, you think you'd have a hard time keeping up with them? Like, oh, I don't know. Like, that's not who you want in aligners, like, at all. So do you charge more for aligners or over braces, or is it the same fee?
Yeah, I have the same fee across the board. Clear metal aligners.
Okay. Lingual. I'm just kidding. What about you, Jeremiah?
Yeah. Regards
You may
to
not
fee,
want to divulge.
No. Yeah. Same fee across the board. Of course, we change fee based on case complexity, but then once we present that, then we typically do the same fee across the board. But sometimes we'll actually change it a little bit if, like you said, for a particular patient, if I'm wanting to treat it with braces versus aligners, we might flex it a little bit to try to push them into the treatment modality we think is going to work best for them.
Yeah. Open bites for me is like, I want to do aligners all day long.
For sure.
I have a question here from Christina Carter. She says, do you have any concerns with generalized decalcification, which with lingers in teens, not cleaning aligners or brushing after eating? The new aligner decay pattern is on the rise. I've not noticed that. I mean, I've had maybe a patient or 2 where you get that kind of an appearance where, the aligner comes in and it's covered in plaque, which is gross. I would have to assume that braces would be its own problem. Have you guys seen that as an issue, or is there anything you do to address that?
I'm pretty up front at the consult, I always speak about, we call aligners snack inhibitors. I say with these things in, it's cold water only, everything else they come out for. So I say, if you're a snacker, you shouldn't do this. You should do braces. So.
Yeah. I haven't really seen that being a huge problem either with teenagers, except for, like Al said, I think I've had the one case, where they came in and they've just been pounding soda or energy drinks with the aligners in. And, but other than that, I think it's not been a problem.
Yeah, but their hygiene is otherwise not so great either in those typical cases, so
generalized hygiene, not just oral.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Take your pick. All right. So we got 2 other questions here. We got about 5 more minutes and we'll push on to talking about uLab. Jeremiah, you run a very busy practice, as we sort of alluded to earlier. You stay really active in your church. You've done mission trips all over the world, which is really cool. Wish we had more time to talk about. Maybe next time. But one of my issues with aligners, and I do take some issues with it, mostly just to upset Jonathan Nicozisis. But how do you keep up with all your what I call homework, all the ClinChecks and all that kind of stuff? And I asked a question too about, last year's been tough. How do you relax on the weekend and all that kind of stuff? And there's like 3 or 4 people who answered, I do ClinChecks. It's like, ooh, it's so depressing.
Yeah.
But it's also so true. So how do you keep up with all that while maintaining a busy life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I think everyone's answer for that is a little bit different because it just goes back to the, your work-life balance. And one of the things, similar to what you're saying is I try not to have, a huge aligner practice. I would say 20% of our, not even that, probably 10 to 15% of our overall cases are aligners. And that's nice flow for our practice. I think when you get into, 200, 300 aligner cases, they become truly its own animal to keep up with the ClinChecks. And so for me, one of the biggest things, which has been awesome, is bringing in a new, associate. So I brought in Allison Williams this past year, and she's amazing. And so just having that other set of hands of when you're really busy, like, someone else is going to be taking over those ClinChecks and approving or looking over your setup is huge. And so obviously if you have another doctor in the practice, it makes a big impact. We text each other every day. One of us will say 3M done, Invisalign done. That's kind of how we manage it. And if one person's covering the clinic, the other person's trying to do it during the day too. So we try to get it done during the day. And then otherwise, of course, before I had, the advantage of having another doctor, like you said, you just end up doing it during lunch breaks, in the afternoons. There's really no other time for it. I feel like to squeeze it in when you're a single doctor during the clinical day takes away from your clinical time. So that's not really advantageous either.
Yeah, it takes away from my Facebook time too, which is just not going to happen. I can't.
There's actually a job for you.
Well, you bring up a good point. It's not the end of the world, right? Managing a group or whatever.
Yeah.
If only that's what I was doing. I'm just scrolling aimlessly through posts and things and shadow reading, posts in the other groups and things. No, that's good. I've actually tried it like an aligner coordinator. We're just about to lose her. That's been very effective, and had her actually do the aligner fellowship, and she would kind of do the first few steps. And so I need to get back to doing that. I'm going to try to actually work it into the schedule and have the team bring me over to do a few ClinChecks at a time. We'll try that out. Vanessa, what do you do to keep up with all the ClinChecks and everything?
A couple things. So one, doctor preferences, like that helps a ton. I've got I feel like an essay or paragraphs in there of okay, for deep bites, here's how I want it set up, open bites. So I spend a lot of time with that. So treatment designs come back, pretty good from the beginning. I've got an aligner coordinator who's great, kind of coaching her to, learn a few more things. And then something that actually Chris Feldman said at a conference one time was he takes 2-hour lunches, and I implemented that. So I spend about an hour, on my lunchtime catching up with all the admin stuff, including treatment designs. And that's been awesome. I don't take it home.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. One of the things that Vanessa mentioned that I think is huge too is for me now, like when we're doing a refinement, is I try to give as specific instructions as possible chair side. So that way when, our aligner coordinator submits it, then it's coming back with all the key areas I really wanted to fix, instead of, sometimes you get a refinement back and suddenly they're trying to correct some huge, problem with the second molar, and you were just trying to close an anterior space. And so that's also saved a ton of time.
Yeah, I've noticed that the key to efficiency in the clinic is the next visit note, and it's no different for the the Invisalign refinement or the clarity refinement or whatever you want to call it. So it's just getting my team to copy and paste those into the appropriate
Yeah.
field. All right, final question here, and I think we sort of touched on it a little bit, but I think an obvious thing with switching to one of these systems is name recognition. People come in asking for Invisalign like they'd ask for Kleenex or for Coke. How do you explain this in a consult setting when someone says, no, I really want Invisalign, or I was wanting Invisalign? What's your answer to that? Vanessa?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I really actually don't get a lot of people that come in that are like, hey, I want Invisalign. We use the term clear aligners. And if somebody says Invisalign, I say, okay, yeah, their patent ran out a few years ago. Now we have tons of aligner companies. Like, I really believe in this company and this brand. This is great. And I think you're going to do, wonderful in this. And I've never had anybody turn me down from that.
Yeah. So for me, my similar to what you're saying, Kyle, when I first went in with clarity aligners, I was really kind of afraid of that for sure, that was going to be a really big problem. Patients not wanting to, accept their, going to a product that wasn't the brand name. And so what I did was in my consult room, I actually have the clarity aligners and also the Invisalign aligners, and they're sitting, side by side. And so I always want to make sure the patient is 100%, understanding this is what the product you're getting. I don't want to feel like they're paying for Invisalign. All of a sudden they show up and it doesn't say Invisalign. And so I'll pull both of the, aligners off of the models. And I'll just say, hey, for your particular case, you're a candidate for any type of aligners. My preference is to treat you with clarity aligner, and I'll hand them to them and say, you can feel them. You feel how this one's, stiffer. And of course they immediately say, oh yeah. And I say, a lot of times it's talking about transverse. I'll say, I really feel like I can get a lot more width to your smile using this product because it's a little bit stiffer and there's no cost difference. And this product is only available to specialists right now. And that's what I like to use. And the patients, I've not had a single person say anything back except, okay, like whatever you say. But I do like doing that and having them kind of side by side, because then, I feel like the patient truly feels them both, and they sort of help make that decision of, okay, I'm going with a clarity aligner.
Yeah. Okay. Great answers. You guys were amazing. It's like you've done this a million times. I feel like I've done this a million times now. That was great info. So that was sort of what we're shooting for. We're shooting for like basically 20 minutes, get kind of a feel for sort of the ins and outs of clarity aligners. Of course, if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can follow up with Jeremiah and Vanessa. I'm sure they'll be kind enough to answer your questions on Facebook. You can drop comments inside the Digital Orthodontist Facebook group where this is archived. If you have any follow-ups, there were some other questions I wish I could get to. And actually, I'm going to just do a rapid fire question. I think Ruse asked this. Do you do 1 week for each aligner with 3M, or do you do 2 weeks?
1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. Okay. That's what I thought. There you go, Ruse. Okay. That's all we got, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to shift into an ad that I need to read. And then we will go into Dr. Eric Wu. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of Atlanta. Vanessa, enjoy the rest of Rancho Cucamonga. And thank you guys for coming on. All right. So today's episode, or tonight's episode, I should say, is sponsored by 3M Oral Care. And we're going to talk a little bit about digital bonding. So making bonding inefficiencies a thing of the past, 3M digital bonding is designed to decrease chair time and increase patient comfort. The new system allows you to select the right tools for each case while using integrated treatment planning delivered via intuitive software. It's the future of bonding in orthodontics. To learn more, to request a demo, visit 3m.com/digital bonding. That's 3m.com/digitalbonding. Digital bonding. You plan the strategy, we'll provide the tools to make it work. All right, there we go. Thank you to 3M for their generous support of this podcast. All right, so we were going to bring on Dr. Eric Wu. And of course, thank you to Doctors Vanessa Peterson and Jeremiah Sturgill for spending the night with us. All right, so Dr. Eric, how are you doing, man?
Good, Kyle. How are you?
Man, I'm hanging in there. So I'm enjoying learning about some things I didn't know about. And I actually had a very illuminating phone conversation with you. What has that been, about a week ago? You're a smart guy, Eric. So I'm excited to get into some more stuff with you. And so I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there too. So I want to read your bio very quickly so people know a little bit more about you. Dr. Eric Wu is a Silicon Valley native and has been practicing in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 13 years. He's a key opinion leader for uLab and also for OC Orthodontics. He teaches at 2 orthodontic programs and a dental assisting program. And Dr. Wu has two beautiful children with his wife, Lisa, and Eric. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
So
for having me.
what's new with you? What have you been up to lately?
Not much, just teaching, lecturing, and just seeing patients just like everyone else.
Yeah. I think that the thing that I took away from our conversation, in addition to you being a very bright guy, obviously, is that you love this stuff. You strike me as one of the people that, in doing an interview show, you run into people occasionally that like really just like love this stuff, kind of top to bottom. I hope we have some time at the end to talk about 3D printers, and you were like talking about this like new 3D printer you had, and it was like sounded like kind of a Ferrari of 3D printing. So we'll see if we get around to that. I do want to give some good time to uLab and getting through the system. I know we got a lot of people who use all this out there and everything. So tell me real quickly, what's your background on aligners? How long you've been using them? What all have you used? How many cases do you? All that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, funny story, because people were talking earlier about how many clear aligner cases they did in residency, and you know how many I did? A big
Yeah.
fat zero. So
Yeah.
by the time I came out of residency, I was Mr. Anti-clear aligners. I was telling everyone they didn't work and that they needed braces and all that. And so if you're practicing in, middle Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, California, you're not going to get very far if you're not offering some sort of, clear aligner treatment modality. So I figured out really quick that I needed to, learn how to use clear aligners. So that was probably around 2010. And so I just made a commitment to myself to go to every single CE event that I could possibly find with clear aligners, and just made a commitment to learn the biomechanics for clear aligners. So, I probably got about 7+ years of experience with Invisalign, about 7 years of experience with Orchestrate, and about 4 years of experience with uLab. That sounds like a lot of years, but all sum total is probably about 8 years of clear aligner experience, probably over 1,000+ cases of completed Invisalign. And now I've got about 2,000+ active cases in uLab.
Wow. 2,000? That's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
You told me, I think over the phone, how many aligners you were doing like a month? What was it?
Yeah, so it kind of varies. On a slow month, we'll be doing about 500 models. On a busy month, probably around 800 models a month. But I would say on average, we're printing about 600 models a month.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's great. And you're doing most of that like in-house on your own printer, or are you kind of shipping that stuff out, or what?
Yeah, I mean, most of it's in-house, but truth be told, my lab tech went part-time recently, and, we had some people out sick, and so we had to, kind of pivot. And so it was nice having uLab's Memphis printing facility for aligners. So we were able to send out cases and still stay on track.
Yeah, right on. You should get bonus points for the Memphis shout out. I'm actually drinking tonight out of a Memphis themed cup. This is Central Barbecue. If you've ever been to Memphis, in my opinion, the best overall barbecue place in Memphis. So go check it out if you like barbecue, and if you don't come to
Love
Memphis.
barbecue.
Yeah. So yeah, uLab does have a facility here in Memphis, which is really cool. So let's shift into this question. Obviously, you have the pedigree as it comes to aligners, and so thanks again for doing this. In our pre-interview, you kind of like laid out sort of 3 things that you like about uLab, which I think was nice. So I do want to give you time for each one. The first thing that you mentioned was speed. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, Kyle. What I love about uLab is speed in several respects, but let me talk about the speed with the workflow. So if you get all your sort of ducks lined up in order, you can actually deliver same-day aligners to the patient if you're printing in-house. And if you're sending aligners to Memphis, Tennessee, to uLab's printing facility, you can deliver aligners in quick as about 10 days, 10 business days. So, really loving the efficiency of that workflow. And, just in general, there's less downtime with the uLab workflow, right? Like for example, like I've got multiple of my in-office assistants. I call them digital orthodontic assistants, right? And basically, I teach them all my preferences. They do most of the setup of the case with the assistance of the AI and the uLab software. And so it really kind of speeds up the setup of the case, and they do most of the setups. And what they give to me is usually vanilla, and I go in there and just kind of sit down for a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes each, and just approve them. And then we're off to the races. We're off to print and off to fabrication. So it's a pretty efficient workflow. I probably spend upwards of, I don't know, an hour or two a week. But here's the thing, it's like it allows you to basically compartmentalize your time, right? People were talking earlier about, spending nights and weekends and vacations on ClinCheck. And, I've been there too. I remember those days, and, it's not very fun. So one of the sort of added benefits of uLab is it's eliminated a lot of this revisiting of the digital treatment plans over and over again, which has actually translated to a savings in time for me. I've actually gotten a lot of my own time back, right? So I love the efficiency of the process in that regard. So it really is, as simple as, scan the patient, plan it, and then you're done. So love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have like follow-up questions, and I know we don't have like a ton of time, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. Your digital orthodontic assistant, where are you finding that kind of person to do that sort of work?
Actually, it's not that hard. Like our most recent hire has no orthodontic experience whatsoever. We found her, she used to work at a golf course. Actually, she worked at the concession stand of a golf course.
Oh, yes, of course. Concession stands. That's where you
Yes, of
find
course. But typically they're younger, and typically they're pretty well versed with technology, right? And they're quick to pick it up. I mean, the great thing about uLab software is that the interface is really intuitive and really easy to use, right? Like I remember in the old days of uLab, I think version 2, when we were doing segmentation, kind of selecting all the teeth on the touch screen, my daughter at the time was 6 years old, and she would say, "Daddy, can I do the part where I'm choosing the teeth on the screen?" So, I mean, it's so intuitive and easy to use. If a child can do it, I mean, anyone can pick up the uLab software and learn how to use it within a couple hours.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I am such a I like to write anyway, so I'm a typer when I do my notes. So you'd be disgusted at my Invisalign workflow. I don't like to manipulate the teeth, so I think that would take some learning. I know how to do it. I like to kind of describe what I want from it. So it sounds like you're doing just the opposite, but you're touching the case once and then it's done, which of course makes it a lot faster. And the idea of same day delivery of aligners is pretty slick. So kudos to you. All right. Second thing you mentioned was clinical flexibility. How does it offer greater flexibility for you clinically?
Yeah, so I think first of all, having in-house printing capability, in-office aligners allows me greater clinical flexibility moving in between fixed appliance treatment and clear aligners, right? And that wasn't possible before due to the financial constraints of sending out the clear aligners to an outside lab. So that's been great. Fabricating everything in office, or sending to Memphis for print. There's a lot of customization in the software, so I can get as detailed or as granular as I want with the software. I control all of the movement staging, the velocity of movement of the teeth, even as granular as adding block out for undercuts. The discussion earlier was the concern with patients who may be older with a lot of maybe loss of tissue, loss of attachment, and concern of the plastic kind of getting locked in those undercuts. Well, in uLab, we can account for all of that, right? And even going as far as putting in Pontics or adding elastic rubber bands. There's just a lot of customization, very feature rich, that gives me that clinical confidence and flexibility. If you're printing in office, you can even further customize the plastic that you use for aligner fabrication, right? So in the beginning of a case, if you've got a lot of lower anterior crowding, maybe you need a softer plastic like Zendura Flex to really be able to adapt and wrap around the crowded lower front teeth. And then towards the end, you've got that stubborn lateral that you just want to rotate one more darn degree. you can customize the plastic, use something a little stiffer to really give you that final oomph to finish the case.
What kind of plastic would you use for that?
Maybe like a regular Zendura A would probably be sufficient for something like that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, sort of, you know, I was just kind of thinking off the top of my head, another aspect of clinical flexibility is, you know, when patients need to get out of fixed appliances, like, you know, ASAP, it allows me to do that, right? You know, if they've got a bar mitzvah, or maybe they got a wedding coming up, you know, some significant life event where they absolutely want to be out of brackets, but you still may have some, you know, finishing or space closing that you need to do. Having in-house aligners, or having, you know, uLab print the aligners in Memphis is an excellent option, right? And certainly when COVID hit, we had a ton of patients who left California. And so, you know, they'd come in on a Tuesday and they'd say, oh, by the way, doc, I'm leaving for Texas on Friday. And so, you know, their appointment turned into an emergency debond visit, and we had to switch them over to clear aligners. And so having in-office fabrication capabilities with uLab was really key for that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think the third thing is going to help tie into some of the clinical flexibility, because I do think the pricing structure that uLab offers is nice for those little finishing steps or that kind of same day stuff. So tell me about that. So the third factor you like, so you talked about what? Speed, clinical flexibility, and value. So how does the cost compare to other systems?
Yeah, so great question. So actually, uLab got rid of the monthly software fee, right? Which is awesome. So right now, basically pricing is per aligner if you're sending to Memphis for print, or it's per STL if you're printing in office. So that really empowers me to have that clinical flexibility to use aligners in cases that, you know, maybe normally wouldn't have been financially feasible with the big box brands, right? It allows me to utilize combo cases, hybrid cases, and you know, finish with clear aligners. So I really like that aspect of it. So I think right now I'm paying about $19 per aligner if I send it to Memphis. And if I'm printing in office, it's just $2.50 per export of an STL file. So it's great. There's really no commitment upfront to a big package. It's basically kind of pay as you go. But here's the kicker: if you send it to Memphis for a patient, the max that you'll ever pay is $950 per case, and then everything after that is free for up to 3 years. So I really think that uLab has a really strong commitment to partner with the orthodontist in order to give them some, you know, feature-rich tools full of control and have it priced at a really reasonable rate. So I've been really happy with that.
Yeah, it's great. So obviously you like uLab, or you want to be using it, but what are maybe some shortcomings about the system? I think one of them would be name recognition. I think 3M, you know, the people using that have a good answer, like, well, it's 3M. I mean, everybody knows 3M. Nobody knows uLab. So I guess, what do you say about that? And then what are maybe some other shortcomings?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, probably the one shortcoming of uLab and uSmile aligners is that we aren't a household name. But I actually see that as a good thing, right? Because that really allows me to brand the aligners and showcase my brand and my expertise with clear aligners. So, you know, in my practice, when a patient comes in and, you know, we're talking about brand A or brand B, you know, I'm talking about our in-office aligners being customized, personalized clear aligner treatment for them. They're not mass produced, they're locally made, and we have full control over the whole process. And of course, being in Silicon Valley, you know, I'm comparing it to cell phones. So you've got Apple, you've got Samsung, they all do the same thing. It's just, you know, different brands, right? So what my experience has been, it has been that patients really aren't brand loyal. They trust us as the orthodontist to pick the right tools to give them the best result. So it's really about empowering the patients to be the best that they can, using the best tools and the best technology available.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah, I feel strongly about that products centered marketing, to me doesn't make sense. It's about the orthodontist as a perceived expert in the market, and a lot more that goes into that. But products can play into that, but I don't think we're in that stage of being able to market oneself as the aligner guy or gal, because everyone's an aligner guy or gal. So let me ask this question. It came up in the chat. And you may have an answer, may not, but what are the rotational limits of Zendura Flex or harder plastics? Do you have any sort of an answer to that?
About 2.5 rotational per stage.
Do you have an answer for that? Yeah, I have an exact answer for that. Okay, well, there's your answer, everybody. That's awesome. I want to ask a question about this. So for one thing, you speak Chinese, which is awesome. And so I think that gives you like a distinct advantage, because you were talking on our phone call about printers that are like in China. And another really interesting thing is you were talking about how the Chinese consumer or the Chinese doctor tends to prefer the Western aligner systems, which is like kind of blew my mind a little bit. But
that's right.
I want to discuss, I guess, first, before we get into maybe the Chinese thing, but is 3D printers, what is the latest and greatest? Let me ask two questions. First question, if I'm just an orthodontist wanting to dip my toes in 3D printing, what printer would you recommend? And then if you're wanting to go, deep into those waters, what do you think is the best printer right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kyle. And of course, it's a bit of a loaded question, right? Because it's kind of like buying a car. Like, what features do you want? Is it speed? Is it value? So it's kind of a loaded question. But I would say it really doesn't cost that much to kind of get your feet wet in the in-office 3D printing arena, right? I mean, for probably less than $3,000, you can get a basic Unis slash, and you can get that from Great Lakes Orthodontics, and that's a pretty nifty little guy. It'll print 6 models flat in less than half an hour. So it really doesn't take a whole lot of money to kind of get in the game. A lot of people have what's called a Sprint Ray Pro. And that's a nifty little machine too. It'll do indirect bonding. It'll print dental models, and that's it'll also print about 8 or 9 arches flat in about 30 minutes or so. But there are going to be some newer entrants into the U.S. market that are really going to bring some new features as far as 3D printing into the U.S. market. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. What's the one that if you're okay sharing, what was the one that you had just gotten? It was like $100,000, right?
Yeah. So, so I got what I call the Bugatti of 3D printers recently. It's called a Lux 3D. It's a $100,000 printer. I'm crazy, I know. But this thing will print 17 arches vertically in about 37 minutes. So it's extremely fast.
Yeah.
So we've had it
for the orthodontist who just can't wait,
Yeah. Shiny object syndrome, I know. But it's been great. We love it. And the cool thing is that it can print direct. So it'll be able to print aligners as well as retainers directly. And in fact, just this afternoon in the office, we're doing some test prints with a direct print aligner. So that's not that far off into the future.
Yeah. I was thinking, what was I like pitching to you like 5, 7, 10 years until we're direct printing aligners, and you're like, oh, next month. When do you think that's going to like be viable, printing the actual aligner?
Well, direct print of aligners, I think we're still a ways off, right? We've got FDA approval for direct print of retainers already, but direct print of aligners, probably, I don't know, maybe later this year or early next year. We'll have to see. Yeah.
Man, that's not that far off.
No,
so this will be a very different conversation in a year or 2 or 3 for sure. Yeah. So Eric, you were excellent. You were great.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing this. Yeah, I know it's quick, but that was it. And we got to get you back on to talk about some of this stuff again. You obviously love this and have a lot of great stuff to share and a lot of expertise. So there was a follow-up question that was about what your branded aligner cases look like. And maybe if you'll go into the Facebook group, if you are cool with it, kind of share maybe what that looks like in the comments would be awesome.
Sure.
We are going to get to our final segment with Jonathan and Maz here in just a second. I have one final ad to read. Eric, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
So let me go ahead and read this. And if you have any questions for Eric, you can reach out to him. And here is another advertisement about 3M Digital Bonding. if you're interested in that. With our scientific approach to product development, we worked hard to ensure the 3M digital bonding system is easy to use and helps you create beautiful smiles. With this system, you can bond a full arch of brackets all at once. Not only is it designed to decrease chair time, but it can help to ensure the accuracy of the bracket placement. Talk about revolutionary. Are you ready to try the 3M digital bonding system? Visit 3m.com/digital bonding to learn more about this game-changing system. All right, so it's not just aligners. We can digitally bond braces, all sorts of digital systems. People are just raising their hands. They love raising their hands, you know? All right, so who do I have here with me? Who are these two? These rogues. I love you guys. I don't know if you know this, but Jonathan has been on this show, what, like 4, 5 times or something?
I easily hold the record, Kyle, without a doubt. So next to my Angle Society membership, this is right there, being, you know, orthodontist with the most appearances on the TDO. Yes.
We have someone that said, damn, 3 heroes. Hey, I'll take it. And so we have, of course, Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis and Maz Moshiri. I love saying the name Nicozisis. I could say it probably 10 times in a row.
Listen, I can't even say it correctly. You do a much better job than I do, so it's all good.
Fagala, Moshiri, and Nicozisis. Sounds like the beginning of a joke of some sort. All right, I'm gonna read your bios, and of course, everyone wants to hear from you guys. You're representing Invisalign, of course, but in fairness, you're representing the aligner movement in general. You guys have been very much party to that. We call it a movement. I don't know, but you know, over the last 5-10 years for sure. All right, let me shut up and read the bio. Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis has been an orthodontist since 1997. You know what I was doing in 1997? I was playing Banjo-Kazooie on my N64. He completed his dental education at UPenn and attended Temple for ortho. He also completed a cleft palate externship in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jonathan is an internationally recognized speaker for Invisalign and the co-founder of the Aligner Intensive Fellowship with our final guest, Dr. Maz Moshiri, who attended Emory University for college and then the University of Louisville for both dental and orthodontics. He teaches at SLU, St. Louis Orthodontics, and is an internationally recognized speaker for Invisalign as well, and for himself. And he's the co-founder of the Aligner Intensive Fellowship, an online residency that has educated thousands of doctors worldwide on the proper treatment planning and use of clear aligners. I have taken that course. I was in group 2. Wish I had been in group 1, you know, but I missed the boat. But I was in the Orthodontic Exchange Invisalign group where this really all got off the ground, I think, and I learned a ton from you guys. So thank you for that. I count the both of you as being by far the biggest influence on how I treat aligners. So thank you. I couldn't think about doing an episode on aligners without you two on it. And I said in my notes, it seems I can't quit either of you. So let's get into this stuff. What's new with you guys? What do you got going on?
Well, I think, Kyle, it's appropriate that we're having this talk a few days before Valentine's Day so we can discuss our love for aligners. That's why I'm wearing a red shirt. And so I will apologize in advance if some of my commentary, you know, shows some heartfelt emotion. And so I'll start with this, Kyle. You know, is that an interruption tab in your pocket, or are you just happy to have Maz and I on your podcast at the same time?
I'll let you be the judge of that. You've been saving that line.
Oh, I got a lot more. Believe me.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait. This is why you keep coming on the show. Jonathan always brings the heat. Dan Ryan has a very important clinical question. He says, "What are you drinking tonight, Jonathan?"
Well, tonight I have my Aligner Intensive Fellowship glass, and I'm drinking a Cherry Hill Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley. You know, I had a Cabernet earlier, but I'm lightening it up so that I can stay coherent for the rest of this hour. So
yeah, use the promo code Purple Teeth to save 15% on wine.com.
Right.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's get into this stuff, or we'll just keep doing this for 20 minutes. So this is a funny question to ask the two of you, but I've asked everyone, and I think it's relevant. What's your history with aligners? Okay. Maz, we'll start with you. How long have you been using them? How many do you do a year? What systems have you used? Yada, yada, yada.
So been using Invisalign for about 12 years. Experience-wise, I have a similar experience to Eric, where I did 0 in residency. came out and just understood the opportunity, was fortunate enough to see some people lecture on it where they kind of opened my eyes as to what was out there. Currently, we do about 300 cases of Invisalign a year. I also do some uLab for some in-house aligners as well. Probably more specifically for patients that are, in braces that I want to finish in detail towards the end of treatment. I find that's a fantastic adjunct for that. So just really more minor things, but the comprehensive cases I'm doing mainly with Invisalign, of course. So.
Yeah. Now on those uLab ones, is that you're printing in house or you're sending them out and getting them back?
Printing in house. So I have my own lab technician in house and scan and plan it in house, and then she prints them up, and we usually deliver them the next week to the patients as they're kind of, we call them active retainers, if you will, kind of clean things up, and then I'll print the final retainer in like a 040, tackless tough, and then they're on their way, and they've been responding beautifully to that. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis.
Yes. So, when I graduated, actually I graduated in 99 from Temple for residency, and Invisalign did not exist commercially, that is. And I graduated in October of 99, and I took the certification course that January during a snowstorm where the satellite feed failed like 3 times during the certification course at the Marriott where I was sitting. And so back then, I think when I look at my history, I've kind of lived and breathed the evolution of the orthodontist coming onto or incorporating doing orthodontics with aligners and with Invisalign specifically, where we looked at this lab bill and we're like, well, for this amount of money, I'm treating a case I can treat with a spring aligner, right? And then we kind of got out of the early 2000s and we were in the weeds, just figuring out the mechanics of specific tooth movements, and evolved into treating more and more cases, and then discussing the business aspects, becoming an aligner focused practice, until where we are now, where we'll touch on this later, of course, but the plastic employee and all the aspects and attributes that go along with that. But to get back to your question, I'm a single doctor practice with 2 locations. I probably start anywhere plus or minus 300 Invisalign cases a year out of about 400 for 21 year, 370 another year, depending on the year. I don't have a TC. I have basically 5.5 full-time equivalents in terms of employees. And so respectfully, I can't scale any better than having something like Invisalign incorporated into my practice. And that's just Invisalign. We'll touch on the marketing in a moment. So, but that's where I have evolved to, unknowingly so, but happily so. Yeah.
If anyone wants to know more about Jonathan, that podcast you did with Lance, a few years back, you really walked through that well, I thought. So, and I know there's many out there who want to know more about you. Especially with that top button unbuttoned.
Well, listen, Kyle, I can see you checking me out, Kyle.
Okay, that was good. Always has a line ready. All right, Dr. Maz, the straight guy in this crew, right?
By the way, I have to give Chris Feldman credit. So Chris Feldman and I did this whole thing on Pearls a couple of years ago with Valentine's Day. So my shout out to my boy Chris. So anyway.
Chris. All right, Chris. So I guess, as we're having a conversation and, contextually, all these conversations are, well, I used to use Invisalign and now I do this, or little jabs here and there at, Invisalign or whatever. I think Invisalign is going to be okay. When I did my what aligner system you use, it's like, 85% Invisalign to the rest. I mean, it's still the major elephant in the room, let's say. There's obviously other aligner options, and you're using a little bit of uLab, but what are some reasons why you still use Invisalign, why you still think it's, I assume, the best for your patients?
Well, I think, one thing to just mention from previous, which, I think were honest answers. A lot of people were maybe mentioning costs, but, Jonathan and I are both doing our cases in the 300s because we've committed to the system and the process, and our lab fees are not that exorbitant, but that's something that's going to limit us. And
right,
if I can pay for something, I would like to use something that I find to be premium and that I think is going to be a better product for my patients. And I wholeheartedly believe that's what I'm getting with Invisalign when I use it. And I'll use an adjunct. Let's say that we're using braces. I use 3M brackets. I love the brackets. There's plenty of bracket choices out there. I'm not going to knock other brackets. They obviously all work in some manner or not. But I know manufacturing wise, I'm getting a clean bracket every time. It's pre-pasted. There's advantages I'm paying for with a pre-pasted bracket I'm not getting with other systems, and it fits into my workflow. With Invisalign, I don't see how at the moment other systems can catch up to 20 years of existence in 2 years. I find that implausible. And there's just so much R&D that's gone into the product. The product itself really sits on what they tout as 3 pillars. One is the plastic, of course, which is proprietary to them. One of their smart force features, which are attachments and optimizations. The other one is staging, meaning the automation of how the teeth move. So the way the software decides that for you. So one of the best examples of that is extraction treatment. When you have extraction treatment, the automations go in place where you see the kind of canine walk back first, and you see the 2-to-2 retract on mask. Those are decided by the software for you. So that really decreases the amount of time I have to put into the treatment plan, and it makes my job much more efficient. And Jonathan and I were always teaching historically, conditions and thresholds for Invisalign. These attachments, they're met for this tooth, but they don't exist for this tooth. So because you don't have a solution for this tooth, you need to add this. Because you don't have a solution for this tooth, you got to do this. Well, we keep saying that less and less and less over time. Because, for example, for the longest time, I was putting attachments on molars, and I was having to explain why we're putting attachments on molars. But then Generation 7 addressed molars, okay? Or Generation 8 now with Invisalign recently came out, where Jonathan and I, if we ever talk about expansion, when you're expanding the arch form, you got to worry about a displacement versus a force-driven force system. A displacement-driven force system is one where you're not taking biomechanics into account. And really, most plastics are a displacement-driven force system. You push, you expect the tooth to move, but there's a side effect to it. If you have a force-driven force system, you're actually trying to take into account the biomechanics to limit what's going to happen when you put a force on the crown, because the root's going to react to what you're doing, right? So if I'm expanding, I want bodily movement of that crown. I need to add in buccal root torque. I need to have an attachment to push down on the buccal. Well, if I'm using a competitive aligner system, I don't have to use a name. I have to really think through all that, right? At the moment now, you have to add your attachment. You have to make sure that's at a right angle to push down on. You have to add in your root torque. Well, these are all now being programmed to G8. So a lot of these automations and things that we take for granted are going to limit the side effects or unintended side effects of tooth movement. When you start scaling your practice, you don't have time to deal with these consequences of tooth movement that you have to really get granular and think through otherwise. And when you get busier, God willing, which I think many orthodontists are, if you go back 5 years from now, I'd say most orthodontists would say they're busier today. And I think Invisalign has a lot to do with that as to why a lot of us are busier in terms of putting plastic into the public eye. That's really a major reason why I still use the appliance. I feel like it's a premium product, and I feel like biomechanically it's the best thing I can put in my patient's mouth.
Man, Maz, when you speak mechanics like that, I could listen to you all night. You're the smart track to my heart when you talk like that. It's incredible.
There we go.
So, oh my Lord, I can't wait. I'm just waiting with bated breath for the next one. So Jonathan, let me ask you a question. And that was very, very well said, Maz, and great points for sure.
Thanks.
You're well known for for lecturing rather about the plastic employee. I hope you trademarked that. It's pretty brilliant. Tell us a bit about that for anyone who's not familiar with that. And then also how you've shifted your practice, the staff positions and the duties to make aligners work better for you. And then of course you alluded to this, but how has Invisalign helped grow your practice?
Sure. Well, getting back to my opening statement, I kind of have lived and breathed the evolution of becoming an orthodontist that does orthodontics with aligners, specifically with Invisalign aligners. And there was a time in the 2010 where we're doing more and we are taking less home because we were going from 10% of our cases to like 20%, and we were doing too much analog and not enough digital. And back then, of course, the digital workflow did not exist as how it exists today. And so it was a sort of aha moment where I had a staff that had to leave. She fell at home, injured her shoulder. and I did not replace her. And getting back to your point, the plastic employee aha moment was when I shifted her fixed overhead of $55,000 of salary, retirement, health insurance, benefits, etc., from salary column, which back then was earning me about $200,000 of revenue, and shifted it to the lab fee column in my P&L statement. And $55,000 after my rebate is basically 50 cases. And so if her $55,000 was earning me $200,000 of revenue, okay, as is the average for the JCO and what Chris Benson talks about, but you shift that same overhead metric to the P&L of lab fee and you apply some fees to that. At $5,500, that same $55,000 of, let's say, acquisition fee or overhead will produce $275,000. At $6,000 per case fee, that's $300,000. At $6,500, that's $325,000. So for the same unit cost of overhead of lab fee compared to salary, I'm able to produce more. So the plastic employee then, that was the first aspect. The next aspect was decreasing the number of visits to complete a case. And so some people say, well, that's not the plastic employee, that's the digital employee. And that's all well and good. And I can appreciate that. And I agree with that. But right now, about 80% of my cases, I'm finishing in 7 to 9 office visits, inclusive of initial exam and placement of retainers. The third aspect of the plastic employee is really the marketing. And so we've talked about people having a cheaper lab fee, and that's all great. But I look at my lab fee with Invisalign as part lab fee, part marketing fee, partnered with Invisalign, because I will tell you, and I've lectured on this, that the metrics of new accounts receivable, whether it's the new NFL partnership that they've done that I just spoke on, which I was a skeptic about this, but it's profound the impact it has had in Q4, to the concierge or whatever. But if Invisalign is sending me any given month 10 to 15 new exams, and I start 6 to 8 of them, that's $40,000 to $50,000 in new business any given month directly from a company. There's no other vendor that is doing that for us orthodontists. And this is not me being Jonathan at the top of the doctor locator. That's malarkey. This is, as John Pham talks about, blue ocean opportunity. It's wide open. And so, Align is doing a great job of driving people to our offices, educating them about orthodontics with aligners. And so, you can find a cheaper lab fee elsewhere. You can print out in-office stuff. But in that, you've got scalability problems. We've heard that about people leaving, getting sick. But I can't scale the number of cases I'm doing with 5.5 full-time equivalents the way that I do without Align, plus the new business they're driving into me. So I could talk on this for hours.
No, it's great. That's why I asked. And it is good stuff. I think, arguably there's a sweet spot for those who use Invisalign as it pertains to this bigger conversation. And I think that honestly, it would be to their benefit to address that, or to look into addressing that. Maybe they are. But I think once you're doing the level of volume you're at, the price becomes really good.
Well, then it's a question of scalability, Kyle. So we've heard about our colleagues who I have tremendous respect for, and it's obviously working for them. But when you go from 10, 20% share of chair to 30, 40, 50, you've got these different leaps and levels. And then when you get above 75% to 85% where I'm at, then my schedule capacity is boundless. And I am never at capacity, and I never will be. And, I could not do that with braces, period.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let's get back to a little bit of this. And I had some questions kind of come up about Gen 8. And Maz, I want to ask you, I'm going to get you to talk about biomechanics again, if you're game for that. Sure. Also, what is your jacket? It's a very handsome looking jacket. Is there something like embroidered into it?
It has a little bit of a texture to it, I guess. But thank
like
you.
Over your pocket, that. Like where your pocket square would be. What is that?
It's a leopard print pocket square. Exactly. That's why I
Ger, baby.
Maz puts the fine in refinement. Don't forget that. So.
No doubt. But let's talk a little bit about proprietary features of Invisalign. That's obviously a thing that they really push. And with the different generations, we're on Gen 8 now. We've got optimized attachments, which you guys kind of famously, like in the overall Invisalign camp, have been, the ones that have pushed more for conventional attachments. That's not an absolute statement, but that's a generalization that I think is true. But like Invisalign mandibular advancement and all that, I think there was like an expander at one point. There's all the phase 1 stuff. There's eruption tabs. I mean, there's things that Invisalign is the only group that does these things. Some of those are probably more useful than others, but do these things collectively make Invisalign a better product in your opinion?
I think it's an ecosystem. I think it kind of starts with the scanner, of course, being able to seamlessly go through your smile simulation on the scanner, show your patient what you want, and then go ahead and submit the case and have the ClinCheck up the same day. Many times for me right now, I have the ClinCheck up the same day that I submit the case and get the case going in terms of workflow again, get it submitted. The other products, of course, mandibular advancement feature, that's been a wonderful adjunct to use. I have historically used a lot of twin blocks and Maras to be able to offer that as an option for teenagers that come in. For me, I prefer they be in more kind of fully erupted dentition, but if that's an option for them and they're interested in it, fantastic. We've been able to do that with success for the patients as well. So they never actually had an expander, Kyle. I know they were talking about it, but it never really came to fruition. But yeah.
Well, it's just probably something that I know about that they haven't told you about yet, but it's fine. I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have shared it. That's my bad. I'll have my legal team get with them. Go ahead.
No, but Invisalign First, again, is an option. I personally don't use much First. I think that just comes down to your practice philosophy of what you do for those pre-adolescents. So it just doesn't fit into my practice philosophy, but I know some doctors that use it very successfully, and again, to each their own, as we've been seeing here tonight. So with regards to the optimizations, you kind of brought up optimized attachments. I think Jonathan and I, what historically, the issue with Invisalign's optimized attachments historically was that they would not let you customize them. So it was kind of an all or nothing thing. And I think they've come a long way in terms of evolving with that. So for example, you have a steep curve of speed, and you're getting these optimized rotation attachments on the steep curve of speed, but you really would wish to have the G5 anchorage attachments, which before were only of one size, now you can make them larger. Historically, you couldn't ask your technician to give me the G5 retention attachment on that tooth. So I historically would have removed it, put a conventional attachment on there. Well, that's all changed. Now, if you want to put the optimized attachment that you feel like is important, you can ask for it, you can get it. I would actually much prefer to have an optimized G5 attachment versus a horizontal attachment. Why is that? Well, it has to come with, again, scaling your practice and being efficient. That optimized attachment, it doesn't have as many occlusal interferences with the opposing arch because it's kind of a sphere on top versus being a rectangle. And then that push surface, the actual active surface, people always ask on posterior attachments, do I bevel it to the occlusal? Do I bevel it to the gingival? How the heck do I bevel this attachment? Well, it doesn't freaking matter if you use that attachment. That push surface, because of the optimization, the way software designs it, is always in the right spot. So I'm not having to use 3D controls to mess with it. So the more that you can leverage these optimizations, what the software is giving you, but know how to actually customize it by asking and kind of changing the hierarchy decisions to benefit your patient, the better off you're going to be. So really the goal is, we've had several conversations tonight. I know people taking their ClinChecks home with them. I don't really take my ClinChecks home with me. It's once in a blue moon if I'm overloaded and it's because something came up where I was on vacation or something, where my workflow got interrupted. I do all my ClinChecks at work, but it's because I've learned how to balance using 3D controls versus actually communicating with my technician and leveraging what the software is giving me. That starts with having a really good first prescription, really telling the technician what you want up front, because it's the whole adage about garbage in, garbage out on your lab script, right? You're going to get back a quality ClinCheck if you provide quality instructions, and then being able to understand actually what to ask for, what you're looking for. My goal is to accept the ClinCheck back in maybe 2-3 maximum back and forth with the technician. That's it. So,
well, to your point, Kyle, I think what you've heard Maz just discuss is that Align supports orthodontists by listening to our feedback. And so, 4, 5, 6 years ago, when we would have been more convention attachment based, we have politely been their yin to their yang, if you will. And they've listened to us where we can ask for optimized attachments, where it may not be the first on the hierarchy, but when conditions and thresholds are met, we're able, at least I asked for it in my initial script. And so getting back to the scalability and less time, designing treatment plans, we've got 22 years of R&D and systems in place that make it, truly, I think, unparalleled by what else is out there. And I'll finish up with this. In case you did not know, Maz is power ridged for your pleasure. And like a scanner, he gets it done in under 2 minutes. So it's all good.
Indeed.
Oh,
Indeed.
wow. That's the one he was waiting for. That's the one he couldn't wait to release.
He's been holding on to that one. Here's a good question that just came up. We got about 5 minutes left, and there's so many other good questions. But did Jonathan and Maz worry that AI will put you out of business in 20 years? Actually, that would be a better question when we get down to the very end. But let's ask it now because I already did.
I would love to answer that question honestly, because fundamentally, that's like saying, did the straight wire appliance put orthodontists out of business? Okay.
Agreed.
Invisalign is basically giving us a straight wire appliance with aligners. It's customizing the prescription of what is needed for each tooth via attachments and optimizations for the tooth movement. Again, applying biomechanics to tooth movement, not having a displacement driven system. Having said that, though, it's not diagnosing for you anchorage. It's not diagnosing elastics. It's not diagnosing growth. It's not diagnosing Bolton discrepancies. All these things that make us orthodontists that we went to school for. This system is not diagnosing biology, right? You need to apply fundamental orthodontics to be successful with aligners. General dentists will never be successful with aligner treatment because they don't know orthodontics. We're doing orthodontics with Invisalign, period. We're not doing Invisalign. So I would never buy into that fear that would ever be the case. I think as long as, go ahead. Yeah.
No, we will never be replaced to your point. And, AI, artificial intelligence, is this boogeyman, when in reality, it's there to help us. And, I know that the new iTero was just announced and it's got this AI feature. Well, what does that really mean? It really means that you could, from what I understand is that you'll be able to take a scan and maybe get a ClinCheck back in a half hour to start with all of your preferences, schooled up, ready to go, so that you don't have to wait 2 or 3 days or what have you. So, their AI doesn't replace us. It makes us better. It allows us the scarcity of our resources to be as effective and efficient as possible for scalability. And so I'll take that all day long, plus the marketing driving people into my practice, because until another company does that, another vendor does that, I see no reason to spend my dollars elsewhere.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the last few years of all this and lots of criticisms of Invisalign, some of which I think were appropriate. I think there was a period of time there where it seemed like they sort of lost their way in terms of what I perceive to be support for orthodontists. I know people have different opinions on the stores, and there was positive, I think, that Jonathan saw with the stores and sending patients into your practice. Some people saw that as a move against orthodontics. I think the sort of failed marriage with Smile Direct Club was one of those things. In the next 5 years, and of course, who knows, but do you not have some fears that they move back in that direction? I mean, obviously, direct to consumer, you got the 4th or 5th biggest one selling for $1 billion. I mean, there's big business there. Once that, court decision with Smile Direct Club, once it goes away, do you think Invisalign sort of pivots back direct to consumer, or no? Or
I don't know. I mean, if you look at Align's stock price, they're not making money off direct to consumer. They're extremely successful being a doctor-oriented business, and I think if you make a move away from that's going to crush their current business model. I'm not a financial guy like that, but that's not their business model. Obviously, I think the concern from that would be what Henry Schein just did, right? It was Henry Schein, right, that bought Byte,
No,
No,
that,
it's
that was Dentsply.
Dentsply.
Dentsply, excuse me,
Right.
Dentsply that bought Byte. But
Hey,
I
no
think that's
offense, Henry Schein. You guys are good.
yeah, so sorry about that. No misinformation there, but I think that's the concern is companies going that way because they're not successful in the other route of what they were doing. But Align is very successful at being a doctor-oriented business, and they're almost every doctor's office.
Getting back to the marketing, the AAO, and I love the AAO, spends $5 to $6 million a year in marketing. Based on what I saw from Chris Benson, direct to consumer companies and Align spend, well over $100 million is either 125 or $250 million a year in marketing. I mean, talking about supporting orthodontics, I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And so I know people get their pants in a pucker where, it says doctor, not orthodontist versus general dentist, but, every Invisalign teen marketing thing I've seen, it speaks about going to an orthodontist. So, to your point, Kyle, there were historically some, misfirings, if you will, decisions where, Align made some mistakes and they admit to it. And they heard it from all of us, but I think they are in it to drive business to our offices and to basically, there's a lot, orthodontics is so much different than when I came out 21 years ago. And, I'm waiting for a bracket company to do the marketing that Align Technology does. And then I'll switch my brackets to them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's great. Well answered. And I only bring it up just because it's been the prevailing conversation. And I think it's the foundation on which a lot of these other companies have gained a foothold on the aligner market, is this idea that Invisalign's trying to hurt us. And it seems like the last few years of that has not really seemed that way to me. Of course, people will have different opinions. Let's end with this. Let's talk about the future of aligner therapy. You guys are, is it bullish on aligner therapy, or are you bearish? I can never keep those straight. But it's bullish, right?
Bullish.
Right, bullish.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's talk stock tips. No, I'm just kidding. I did really well on my dog coin. This is not financial advice, but I sold it a little early. Yeah, Dogecoin. For the Doge out there that purchase things like that. Yeah, so I bought a little bit of that. What's the future of aligner therapy? Is it going to be that in 5 or 10 years, like we're all printing this inside our office and maybe we have like an Invisalign printer or Invisalign resin? Like, do you think it's headed in that direction, or what should we expect in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't know. I think, I don't think Invisalign's deaf. And I'm not giving away any internal information. This is just me pontificating. But when you see that some of the previous conversations have been circling around convenience, that you can give your patient aligners in a week or so forth, that maybe Align might consider providing some initial STL files of your clin checks so you could do that if you had an excited patient. I'll tell you personally, I get that, but I can't get a patient back in 3 weeks into my schedule to save my life. You know what I mean? There's no room to do that. So I think is that an advantage? Yes. But, if you're bonding attachments, that takes me like a half an hour. Sometimes those appointments aren't available. So is that a convenience? Yes, no. But again, that could be a possibility.
A half hour to bond attachments? Maz, you should take the Aligner Intensive Fellowship. We'll get it to under 15 minutes.
But you do that yourself, though,
Yeah, I do that myself in New Jersey. That's just the way the laws are. But
I think when they're talking about direct printing aligners, I think that's fascinating. I think that's definitely something that is in the future. What we're doing is finding the right material, though, right? That's going to be able to do that in a predictable manner that has the right biomechanics behind it. Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
No, listen, it's going to be about convenience. And, put it this way, I've yet to have a patient not follow through with treatment because they have to wait 3 weeks to get their aligners. And so while I think it'd be a nice value add to get a same day, next day aligner, I personally think it's a big nothing burger. I could be wrong, and I'll be happy to admit I'm wrong at some point. People come to me because they've been told they can't have Invisalign, or that it's not quote unquote for them. And then when I show them 3 cases that, I treated similar to them, it's all about the confidence and the ability to address their concerns with however they want to do it, whether it's braces or aligners. And so getting back to the question, where do I see it a few years from now? Sure, I see that there should be maybe some early stages that we're doing in office. Again, it's about value. So just because I'm not doing it today, doesn't mean I shouldn't do it, in a couple years from now, because maybe that will be more commonplace, and that nothing burger will be a something burger, in a few years. So I'm always open to new stuff. So I see it more in-house for the early stages. And at the same time, I see it more, as was touched on with uLab. I see a lot more hybrid at the end of orthodontics, where we transition Adafix appliances into, some finishing aligners, whether it's moving teeth and then going to a final stiffer aligner to retain the teeth. So I think it's all there.
Cool. Well, I learned a lot tonight, which is always selfishly the point of these things. Is I love bringing smart people on and listening to them talk.
Well,
and
thank you, Kyle, for the opportunity. Next time we are in an in-person meeting, I'd like to pay you back, and I'd like to treat you like Invisalign and take you out for dinner. So that'd be good.
I like that you ended with that one. A classy joke to bring it home. And I'm going to ask that you actually just stay on the camera as I read my conclusion statements.
Sure.
I want to make a plug for the Aligner Intensive Fellowship, if you'll allow me the
Sure.
opportunity. But first, can I plug my own meeting? Is that
Yes,
okay?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this podcast, then you will love the Digital Orthodontist Live Meeting 2021. It's April 8th and 9th. Jonathan, you said some of the kindest things ever about our prior meeting, and I hope you will attend this meeting.
Of course.
So you can register now on TDOlive.com. You save 50% with Early Bird. It's $50 for doctors, $25 for staff, which includes 8 CE hours from 3M, which can't beat that, right? Can't beat that. So we're going to be live in person to bring people actually to my new home in Memphis. It's 10 big names in orthodontics. It's going to have information that applies to everyone in your practice. And you also, if you sign up, you receive a special workflow on how we handle leads in my practice with the video, all that. Again, $50 for doctors. So go to tdolive.com and sign up. Hey, tomorrow, you probably knew this, and you're probably speaking at this. There's the AAO Winter Conference, and would you guess what the topic is? It's aligners. These
Incredible.
aligners, man, they're popular, aren't they? So I'll be lecturing tomorrow at 9:50 on, funny enough, on how we handle leads. Neon Canvas also has a virtual booth. Go stop by. They'll do a free digital marketing audit. You can also win some Apple AirPods Pro, which if you don't have, they're fabulous. Let's talk about the Aligner Intensive Fellowship. When's the next course?
May is the next course. And we actually, just as a selfish plug, Kyle, we started a new course called AIM, which is Aligner Implementation Management. We heard a lot of people talking about trying to train an in-house aligner technician. We call them a ClinCheck coordinator, obviously, because we do so much Invisalign, but just something as another alternative for doctors looking to scale their practices specifically. And if they're concerned about doing too many ClinChecks, that definitely is something that helps. And that's also starting around May as well. So both courses start in May.
Nice. There's also the, in Marvel, there's an AIM group. You got to be careful around them. I don't know if you know about that.
Is that right?
Any of the comic book nerds out there, yeah. Dennis Flanagan's also an AIF2 alum. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis has been chatting it up tonight. Thank you. Appreciate it. Michael Yoon said great presentation. Really enjoyed it. He is a good man. Our next podcast, and we're almost done. The announcements are almost over, people. It's going to be Thursday, February 25th at 8 p.m. on the topic of cybersecurity. This is something that I've been seeing coming up a lot, and I wanted to get to the root of this and figure it out. There was a group of dentists in Memphis, 17 of them or something, that collectively had all their data stolen. And it was a mess. There's a group in another country that collectively tried to get money out of them and was successful at it. So it's like a business in certain countries now to steal data from dentists and orthodontists and things. So I think it's something we need to understand as a profession and figure out. I do not want that happening to me. So we're going to have Gary Salmon from Black Talon, which I think is the leading cybersecurity company in orthodontics, at least as I understand. Dr. Lauren Manfred, who you may know, she's an orthodontist in California. She actually experienced a data breach herself, and she's going to share about that. And then Dr. Jet Pascal, who's an all-around tech expert, and he is a dead ringer for Stephen Colbert. If you don't believe me, Google them. It should be a lot of fun. Registration will be live soon. If you're watching this on Apple Podcasts, thanks. Drop us a 5-star review if you can. And finally, this is the end of all this. Thanks for spending your Thursday night with me. If you have to work tomorrow, I'm sorry. I won't be working, but I'm sure you'll do a great job. And thank you to our guests tonight. Doctor, it was a dog right there at the
My
end. That's
dog,
great.
yeah.
It's time to go, Daddy. Doctors Vanessa Peterson, Jeremiah Sturgill, Eric Wu, Jonathan Nicozisis, and Maz Moshiri. And from all of us here at the Digital Orthodontist Live, I'm Dr. Kyle Fagala signing off. Thank you, everybody. Jonathan, you're brilliant. Maz, you're brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Signing off. Good night.